Government Services Administration Committee meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Atkins.
Here.
Fulner. Here. Caswell.
Here.
Garrido. Here. Houston. Munn.
Here.
Page.
Here.
Tayloni. Here. Culver.
Here.
Saginato.
Here.
Truitt.
Here.
Valdez Smith. Here. 11 present, 1 absent.
All right, thank you. Are there any presentations or reports to come before the committee tonight? Seeing none, are there any members of the public here to speak on the agenda items for tonight? All right, so if you could one by one come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Howie Fertig. I live in 52 Hibiscus Circle in Hopewell Junction, and I believe there is an agenda item regarding warning labels in gun stores on for tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and my opinion regarding this measure. In October of 1976, when I was 17, I took a Saturday off from work at our parents' family store to visit a friend who was starting college like I was out of town. That morning, my father, Sheldon Fertig, was killed in a holdup, and my mother, Ruth, was critically injured in our family store. That afternoon, I came home, and I told my 14-year-old and 10-year-old sisters that our father was killed, and our mother would be home for a couple of months in the hospital. I took a leave of absence as a freshman in college. First order of business was burying our father. Next was working in the store, and the first thing I had to do was mop up the blood from when my father was killed 10 days earlier. The day before my father was killed, I never thought this would happen to me. My sisters didn't, my mother didn't, our friends, our extended family, the people in our community, never thought it would happen. If I were any of you people sitting here today, I would probably still feel that way right now. So that's my story, but here are some facts. According to CDC, Pew Research, Survey USA, 58% of all American adults or someone they care for have experienced or will experience gun violence. Women in the U.S. are 28 times more likely to be assaulted by guns, to be killed by guns, than in any other high-income countries. Firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens. Every day, more than 110 Americans are killed by gun homicide, and over 200 are injured every day. And there have been at least 314 mass shootings so far in 2022. It's what, July 7th, so about 190 days in the year. Highland Park, Buffalo, Uvalde, Parkland, Sandy Hook, Poughkeepsie. Do we want this city or any part of this fantastic Hudson Valley to become synonymous with gun violence? If we've been willing to allow and promote warning labels on toys, on athletic equipment, on rides and amusement parks, then why wouldn't we have a problem? Why wouldn't we want to put warning labels in gun stores? It's not a political issue. It's a policy issue. It's not about the Second Amendment. It's about reducing gun violence and enacting sensible gun legislation. With freedom comes responsibility. Please be responsible. Please pass this legislature to post warnings in gun stores for all of our sakes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak.
Yeah, again, just come to the podium when the person leaves. I'll give you a warning when you have about 15, 20 seconds left.
My name is Anthony Plantarino. I'm a town of Poughkeepsie resident, and I agree with this man that there is a serious problem.
Excuse me, sir, if you could move the mic closer to your mouth, we can't necessarily hear you from where I'm sitting.
I'd like to agree with this man that there's a serious problem, but this is a really bad way to fix it. Okay, because you have a shooter down New York City Hall that took out a full-page ad in the New York Times as to what he was going to do. Nothing's done about it. They want to defund the police. They want to have turnstile catch and release of prisoners. Then they blame the gun owners for a warning label. It starts out on this pretext that it's a uniquely American problem. It's not. According to NPR, we're number 20 on the list. And you're not even safe without guns, because worldwide we're number 64. There's a lot more violent places in the world than the USA. And things can be done, but it's going to be working with gun owners, not against them, giving them a hard time, burning them, holding the firearms industry culpable for ghost guns that they didn't make. Or a person transfers a gun to somebody else, they have no idea, once it leaves there, just like a car or a bottle of whiskey, what's going to be done with it. So these are not the answers. So work together, not against each other. No private agendas here, if you want to work for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come to the podium. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the
Could
legislature.
you just state your name and address?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yep, I'm Jacqueline Emsley, residing in the city of Poughkeepsie. I am opposed to 113 regarding required posting and distribution of notices that discourage firearms ownership. First of all, the phone number that it's given is from St. Joseph's Medical Center, which is in Westchester County. And my big question is, why would this proposed language not feature local resources such as the Dutchess County Helpline, which has a mobile crisis intervention team, or NAMI, Mid-Hudson, and the outstanding services that they provide? You would think that those who are proposing 113, those who support it, would want to get local help to local people in distress that much faster. Secondly, those who visit a gun shop are already gun owners, or they're seeking to purchase for the first time. They have already made the decision to become a gun owner, so a sign in a window will not affect their determination to own a firearm. The current outrageous crime rate is a direct result of more criminals being out on the street, which is in turn a direct result of the catastrophic bail reform failure, hatred of police, and not allowing them to do their jobs. This has caused a huge increase in legal gun ownership and demand for training unlike anything I have ever seen in my 26 years of being a civilian firearms instructor. Everyone wants to see a massive reduction or elimination in crime and suicides, and the answers are really blatantly obvious. The answer is not in a piece of paper in a gun shop window. The answer is to reevaluate bail reform by looking at the empirical evidence and demand that the state legislature reinstate bail for most of those crimes. Those habitual offenders need to be behind bars until the proper due course and the disposition of their cases. Adjusting bail reform is the answer to crime reduction, and everybody knows it. The answer to reducing suicides is to increase widespread public education of available community resources in places where everybody goes. When the Dutchess County website was first introduced, the county mounted an extensive public outreach in post offices and many other common places, and it worked. A piece of paper in a gun shop window, not going to work, but you already know this. Vote no on 113, and instead, I'm imploring you to concentrate your efforts with proving how much horrific damage the bail reform has done to our community and demand that Albany change its ways. That will save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, please step up. And again, state your name and address in about 3 minutes.
Michelle Squires, Cherry Hill, Poughkeepsie. I'm against this amendment. We regard mental illness as the cause of the recent spate of violence in our state and country. And we know these events are being intentionally thrust in front of us by the media for political use against our Second Amendment right. Meanwhile, much is being concealed from the public. Many lawsuits that have helped to reinstate constitutional rights of citizens have been won, yet the media will not report on those events. International and domestic health data from experimental jabs is being suppressed. An untested 5G technology rollout is being deployed on an unwitting public against the Nuremberg Code. Our water, soil, and air are being poisoned by state and federally funded geoengineering projects. and our small and mid-sized businesses are being decimated in favor of multinational corporations. Our babies are being poisoned by state mandates, another mask mandate that deprives our children of oxygen is in the pipeline, and our adolescents are asked to make a decision between getting an education and denying their right to reject an experimental medical procedure that alters their DNA. Adults and children are being placed on antidepressants and anti-anxiety pharmaceuticals in the hundreds of thousands by our trusted medical professionals with no regard to our nutritional standing. And Mr. Bill Gates, an admitted eugenicist, is now the largest landowner of agricultural land in the United States. The recently declassified MK Ultra-like projects are continuing to ravage those selected specifically for their vulnerability, and our protective regulatory agencies are married, financially tied, to the industries they were created to protect us from. Instead of taking a stand on the issues above, you would sponsor Amendment 2022, ignoring what is harming our mental health, our well-being, and instead impinging on our rights to protect ourselves and our families from a society that has been deliberately driven to the brink, its moral compass tested. Those we trust to keep an eye open for this governmental overreach would instead continue to take part in a system that indoctrinates our children to cause gender confusion, that would help stoke the flames of racism, divide children from their parents, defund and demoralize our police and our military, and replace them with surveillance technology, and in turn, follow dubious guidance to install cameras on every block. With your recent sponsorship of local law intro number 2022, we believe you're all heading in the wrong direction with our waning trust. We can see where this is leading. Will you stop and stand with us instead of against we the people? Or if you will not, please step aside for those who will stand. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is Gina Fox, and I'm a resident of Rhinebeck, a responsible gun owner, and a proud member of Moms Demand Action. For my 22 gun, I took 8 hours of safety training. I passed a background check. I got a trigger lock, and I keep the bullet separate from the weapon. I'm not here today to ask you to ban AK-47s, AR-15s, or other weapons of war, or demand training, demand gun owners carry insurance, or to show proof of safe gun storage, although this is the norm in civilized countries. Instead, I'm asking you for one simple thing, and that is to have a warning sign posted where guns are sold or utilized. It's not going to solve everything. The other gentleman was right, but it's something. It's a simple one thing that can be done. This is what is proposed. Warning, access to a firearm in the home significantly increases the risk of suicide or death during domestic violence disputes and the unintentional death of children, household members, or others. If you or your loved one has experienced distress and/or depression, call, and I thought that this was going to be changed to a local hotline. I'm sure that it will be. Here are the hard statistics to read and to believe. 6 out of 10 gun deaths are suicide. Every month, on average, 70 women are killed by an intimate partner. A gun in the home makes it 5 more times likely that a woman will die at the hands of a domestic abuser. 4.5 million women have reported being threatened with a gun by a partner. In more than half of the mass shootings, the perpetrator shot an intimate partner or family member. Even the American Academy of Pediatrics concluded that the absence of guns from a home is the most reliable and effective measure to prevent suicide, homicide, and firearm-related injuries to children and adolescents. One simple thing, a warning sign like we have at amusement parks, on medicines, paint, tobacco, that will save lives. If a parent or a child were waiting to be served or curious in a gun store, it may make a few think, maybe I don't need to have a gun in our home. That simple thing will save lives. One simple thing that would allow you to hold your head a little higher tomorrow. Holding their head high is something none of the innocent people dead of suicide or by slaughter by gun can do. I'm not willing to stand here and beg you to do the right thing. I demand you do the right thing. One simple thing, the high majority of people who elected you support common sense gun safety, even those in every party. This is an easy one you can feel good about. You have a duty to your constituents, to your county, to your state, and to your country. One simple thing, one easy vote. And even if Marcus Molinaro has the NRA in his back pocket, as they do him in theirs, you don't need to be there as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Barbara Brown, and I reside in the town of Poughkeepsie. And I am opposed to the local 222-113 proposition. Can I ask a question? Outside, did anybody notice something different when they were coming in here? I would say not too many people. Behind those doors, there was a green paper, a blue paper and a yellow paper, and that had the law, or whatever you want to put on, for the gun owners in the shops. And so I just thought it would be kind of interesting, because when you walk in, it's at eye level, and it's on both of those doors. And apparently, if you saw the colors, but you never read the sign, case closed. But they say when there's more government, there's less freedom. When there's less government, there's more freedom. And I just want to add something here, just a food for thought. The first murder, when our existence began, was Cain, who was jealous over Abel. And he took the first gun, I meant stone, and he killed Abel. God, our Creator, did not curse that stone. He cursed the man, Cain, and removed him from the garden. In the very beginning, God realized that the stone was not the problem. It's the man that used the stone is the problem. And so there were some opportunities that were said about what we could do to help bring in what's happening in our nation and in Dutchess County and period. In the very beginning, it was man who had not learned self-control, who was not obedient. He could not love. He chose to destroy those around him to gain power. That's what we see happening in our nation today. I encourage our Dutchess County legislator to reevaluate the best way to attack this problem. Obviously, the signs really don't work, and I don't even use them. There are already laws in place, and someone said to me that it is not the job of legislature to regulate business. It's the job to keep our counties safe. Suggestions were made. More gun safety courses with a nominal fee. Tough on crime, already happening.
Direct on your comments.
Okay. Education, there's a lot of things that can be done. We need a foundation. We need to really consider what God would have you do. Because we are a nation. Dutchess County is a great county, and you support us. Tough on crime. Teach truth. Kind of things like, do not kill, do not murder, do not covet others' desires. Those are our problems. We don't have that foundation of hope. And that's why we're facing what we're facing today. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest that I move a little closer, you can be next.
My name is Gina Liberti, and I live in Clintondale, New York. First, I'd like to say I'm very sorry for your loss. But I have to say that the person who did this horrible crime was a criminal and probably did not have a legally obtained firearm. I realize that this is a very complex dynamic because we're dealing with people who express themselves in negative ways. And when I see something, access to a firearm or weapon in a home significantly increases the risk of, it makes it sound like it's the tool that's causing the problem instead of the people who are involved. I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared, or I'd give you better statistics, but I know that the #1 drug involved in violence and suicidal ideation is Chantix, and the #2 and 3 drug after that are antidepressants. So there's clearly issues in our society that need to be addressed that have nothing to do with a sign that says this causes this, when a lot of the numbers that I'm reading, I'm looking at some of these statistics, are out of context. When I'm looking at a third of New York gun homicide are under the age of 25, how many of these people are in gangs? How many of these people are living in really depressed economic situations, and their only recourse is to be violent? If they didn't have a gun, do you really think they would not be violent? I think that there needs to be a certain amount of common sense and looking at this problem from a bigger image other than just sticking a sign in the window and creating an image of perhaps unrealistic information that's out of context. I think we need to look at this from the perspective of people have issues that need to be addressed from a mental health perspective. People need stress management issues and anger management issues, and it's not the tool, it's the person involved. Please no on 113.
Thank you. It's your turn.
My name is Robert Hahn, and I live in the village of Red Hook, New York, and I'm not here to argue whether guns are good or bad. I am a gun owner, but I want to give you a brief summary of my background and why I'm going to talk about the sign. I'm against the sign because I served as a first responder EMT for 17 years upon retiring from my job early. I now presently belong to, since I moved to Red Hook, I've joined the Dutchess County Medical Reserve Corps. I want to talk about suicides, whether this sign will actually help suicides. Let me tell you that in my 17 years of experience responding to probably half a dozen or so suicides, none of them were by firearm. The preferred method was asphyxiation by carbon monoxide. Close the garage doors, get in, start up the engine, sit there, and go to sleep. The second way was hanging. And usually that failed because they didn't know exactly how to break their neck when they hang, and they strangled, which is a horrible thing. Okay? The third way is by overdosing medications. The medicine cabinet comes about as dangerous in the household as the unlocked firing cabinet. Okay? So, I'm against the sign, and primarily the fact that it says it will prevent suicides. I don't think it's going to do one good thing to prevent suicides, and I'm against the sign. I don't think we should put our gun dealers through the cost of putting the sign in. I mean, in preparation for this discussion, I talked to a gun dealer, and I said to him, have you ever refused to sell a firearm to somebody? He said, you bet. He said, he pointed out a woman came into him one day and wanted to buy a firearm now. And she wanted to buy a handgun, and he explained the permit method, and she still tried to talk him into selling her a gun that day and go leave the store. The other example he gave me is a guy walked in, obviously intoxicated. He would not sell it to him. So you've got to trust these guys. They got federal firearms license, and the firearms license are at stake if they don't follow it. So anyway, I'm against the sign.
Thank you. If we move up to the first row, you can step up next. It's kind of first come, first served, so whoever comes up.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Whiteside, and I reside in Hopewell. I'm opposed to the proposed local law 113. This proposal
reduce homicides or suicides. A piece of paper on a door or in a window will not influence anyone. When someone's applying for or receiving their pistol permit, they have already made the decision to own the firearm. Therefore, a piece of paper in a window does not change their mind. Everyone wants to see a reduction in the amount of crime that this proposal will not accomplish. If you really want to reduce homicides and other crimes, then demand that the state legislature reevaluate bail reform and make adjustments. The current soaring crime rate can be clearly documented. Demand that bail reform be reestablished for serious crimes and for those persons for whom the crime is now a habitual lifestyle. Every suicide is heartbreaking. For those individuals determined to take their own life, the presence of or absence of a firearm will not stop them, nor will a piece of paper in a gun shop window. The statistic that stated 27% of suicides in New York involve a firearm proves that 73% of all suicides in New York do not involve a firearm. 73%. Statistics can be misleading. When you read that in the U.S. the rate of gun deaths have increased 33% from 2011 to 2020, how many of those deaths, either accidental or intentional, were committed by a registered gun owner? Once again, when you read that 40,000 plus people died and 84,000 plus people are wounded by guns in the U.S., how many of those deaths and wounds are actually caused by registered gun owners? Where are the statistics that prove the registered gun owner is the cause of all these deaths and injuries? How many of those incidents would have changed by reading a piece of paper? I believe that you will find overall that it is not the registered gun owner who is the cause of the majority of the incidents. Yet all the legislation is pointed only at our registered gun owners. Nowhere is there any work being done to regulate the illegal guns coming into the U.S. that the criminals seem to have such easy access to. Please be aware of any statistics that do not include a breakdown of whether a registered gun owner is at fault or a habitual criminal that has purchased a gun illegally. This piece of paper put up in any store will not change these statistics. It is once again only a band-aid for not dealing with the root of the real problem. Please vote no on Proposal 113. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dory Kaplan. I'm a resident of Hopewell Junction, and I really didn't have any intention, just had an intention of seeing a good friend who might speak tonight. But I feel like, as a psychologist, I feel like when I walked into this courtroom, and it's a courtroom, I was looking at what I felt was like for anybody here, I don't think you would notice signs outside the door, because I think everybody walking into a courtroom is really looking at the court. And that was not on my mind at all. Second of all, I work with special ed kids. I work with kids that are from the 40 projects in New York City. I don't know that a sign is going to stop most people, but if we save one life because one person looked at that sign, to me, it could be my kids' life that was saved.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Terry. I'm a Ziegler Avenue, town of Poughkeepsie. I came tonight because I didn't understand what this was about, and it was just when I saw that gun violence in America is unique to us, I thought, wow, that's not true. So I came, and it's like, we need to talk to one another. So I went and I talked to, is it Yvette? And the gentleman next to her, and explained, what this is for, and I understand why they want to do it. But my thing is, with what's going on now, we'll give you an example. When I first got my gun, to buy a box of bullets was $14.99. Now it's $50 to get a box of bullets. The gun owners, or the people that make the guns and sell them, they have so much legislation passed down on them, and you do more and more and more. A piece of paper, I just think it's a waste of time for all you guys. And everyone needs to talk, and I look at a room, and you're divided. There's this side and that side. I think you should have to sit next to one another. So you discuss your problems, and you talk about what you want to do and what you want to do, and sometimes, you might just plant that little mustard seed and think, oh, well, maybe that's true. So I'm just going to pray to God that you can all talk to one another and do what is right, and just not make it more difficult for the business owners and for the people. I am a gun owner, like I said, and again, I respect what you're doing, and I thank you for doing it. But maybe try to talk to one another. Sit next to each other next time.
Thank you for your comments.
Good afternoon, my name is Thomas Gannon, I'm from Hyde Park, New York. I'll start by saying that my phone's not working out. There we go. I'm opposed to local law 113. I think I'd like to ask what this legislation, local law 113 will accomplish. What's your hope in this bill? In my view, it will only serve to further divide an already divided society. I suggest instead of further alienating law-abiding firearms owners and the businesses we patronize, engage with us in the exchange of ideas. National groups such as the NRA and groups like local rod and gun clubs should be engaged to go into schools, go into classrooms to teach firearm safety and other outdoor activities. Again, groups like Project Appleseed should be invited into schools to teach the origins of the Second Amendment, of the Bill of Rights, and our Constitution, and the rest of our founding documents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Emsley of the City of Poughkeepsie. As I was going through taking a look at this proposed Resolution 113, the first thing I noticed was it was word for word the same public law that passed in Westchester County. Word for word, right down to the fact that it used a phone number for Westchester County instead of using Dutchess helpline. So that's number one. One of the second things is one of the biggest part that they push on it is the suicide rate with firearms. Suicide is a huge problem. But what a lot of people don't realize is that if people want to commit suicide, they will find a way. We have call boxes on 5 bridges run by the New York State Bridge Authority. All 5 of them, from Rip Van Winkle to the north, to the Bear Mountain Bridge to the south, are tied in with Dutchess Helpline. They're not tied in with Westchester. Dutchess Helpline was the one that the Bridge Authority decided to go through to make it easier. How do I know this? I'm retired from the Bridge Authority. I have watched people who have committed suicide on our bridges walk straight by those call boxes and go over. They have already made that decision. This proposed signage is not going to make a difference at all in the suicide rate. Somebody may see it, oh, well, then I just won't get a gun, but I'll go jump off a bridge, or I'll overdose on pills, or I'll lock my car in the garage. And yes, I have had friends that have committed suicide. Friends and acquaintances. Nobody shot themselves, but I've had friends jump off bridges. I've had acquaintances who killed themselves through carbon monoxide poisoning. I've had friends that have overdosed. So I urge you to vote no on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Gross-White-Bay. I'm from Clintondale. Hi, Clintondale. I'm going to piggyback on one comment that's been made a couple of times with regard to suicide rate, because I'd like you to look at this issue far deeper. As an educator, I'm going to just tell you that with suicide rates regarding youth, when you look at the suicide notes that are left, you will find they've been analyzed, first of all, and vetted, and through randomized, not randomized controlled studies, but through peer-reviewed types of status. And we find that many of the 80%, in fact, and I'm lowering that statistic, of their suicide notes have indicators of dyslexia. When you have, and it's being ignored summarily in New York State, probably because people aren't aware of these types of things. So I would really like you to consider more deeply this issue of gun usage, frustration in youth, and then also how this plays out in behavior and also the psychological profiles. I have 40 years of experience in the public schools, and I have seen students come through my purview that have indicated or indicators that there's some real mental health issues. And I would really like this body and other bodies throughout New York State to look at these issues as well, because it really is not just about the sign. It really isn't. There are signs all the way through that we really ought not to be ignoring, and we need to become more educated about this. Remember, 80% of those suicide notes indicate dyslexia, which is related to literacy, which can also be related to low self-esteem and frustration. 2/3 of children that do not read proficiently by the end of 4th grade end up in jail or on welfare. Okay, so I'm one of those creative thinkers that doesn't see things in just in isolation, okay? And that point A of one little sign is going to take care of it, because it's not. I would really encourage you to look at far broader net of information with regard to solving these problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Rivers, and I reside in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm opposed to the proposed local law 2022-113. I know you've heard this before, but I'm going to reiterate it. If you really want to reduce homicides and other crime, then demand that the state legislature reevaluate bail reform and make adjustments. The soaring crime rate can be clearly documented. Demand that the bail be reestablished for serious crimes and for those persons for whom crime is now a habitual lifestyle. Please vote no on proposal 113. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Truman. I live in Tivoli, New York. Thanks for hearing my comments on Resolution 2022-113. I wanted to bring up something that nobody has at this point. The resolution states that to influence the public to make smarter, safer, healthier choices, they are influencing people to essentially think twice about owning a gun, about not owning a gun. It brings up compelling statistics, like there's 45,000 deaths from firearms, including suicide. These are compelling, but they don't paint the whole story. The study commissioned by the CDC has found that defensive gun issues are estimated to occur at a rate of 500,000 to 3 million times per year. This was conducted by the National Academies Institute of Medicine and National Research Council. And it states, just to quote, almost all national survey estimates indicate that defensive gun uses by victims are at least as common as offensive uses by criminals, estimates ranging, as I said, 500,000 to 3 million, in the context of about 300,000 violent crimes. If only 1% of those are life-saving, that's 5,000 to 30,000 lives saved. So if we're wondering about and hoping that we can save a life by discouraging firearm ownership, we should hopefully encourage it to actually save a life. Surfacing only the risks ascribed to firearm ownership stigmatizes the people that choose to own them. It focuses only on potential risks and not potential benefits, and leads to a perpetuation of an unbalanced viewpoint on a complex issue. I feel that this resolution is representative of an unbalanced viewpoint weighted towards only the risks. If we wish to inform, we should inform. Why not include verbiage that says, hey, guns feature in, defensive gun ownership and defensive gun uses that could potentially save your life? Why are we not bringing that up? As it says in the text of the resolution, point-of-sale messaging has been a proven method of influence to make smarter, safer, and healthier choices. This law seems to be weighted only to paint gun ownership as being an unintelligent, unsafe choice, which compares to tobacco and fast food. The major difference is that a cigarette or a cheeseburger will potentially save more lives than it will take. We're all at risk of suicide in our lives. We are also all at risk of violence from outside as well. Firearms are a tool that can help protect us and give us control over our lives. What we do with that control is up to us. We have police officers, as an example today, but as a first responder who lives in a rural area, I know that they can't always be there for us, right? In the moments that we need them, though they will try their best. Promoting responsible firearm ownership will allow us to take care of ourselves in the same way that we're able to not eat or smoke ourselves to death. Wanting to influence towards better choices can be a noble goal, but this resolution seems one-sided and serves to mislead and not truly inform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak for or against this issue?
I'm Gus from Italy, and Thomas Jefferson, forming this country, envisioned the government based on what he called laissez-faire. The loose translation, not only French, but the loose translation would be give the people breathing space. In other words, get off our backs. We're intelligent, we can work with you, we can make decisions every day to the benefit of our fellow citizens, if you will encourage us and our fellow citizens to get together and find real means to solve these problems. The American people are not idiots. The American people do not want to continue fighting each other. We long, most of us long, for the old days, when we could work and live together. Good neighbors sing out, not suspicious neighbors sing. Okay. This paper on the window is just another little niche in the environment to remind people, gun owners are nice. Watch it. They're buying these evil things. Get off our backs. Get off the backs of the American people. And God bless Thomas Jefferson. I hope his spirit returns somewhere where we can get back to what this country was meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak? All right, well, I thank everyone for speaking tonight for and against this resolution. I just want to note for the record that as legislators, we've received over 100 pieces of email from you, the public. And I know we've read through each and every one of them, and they're nearly divided, for and against. So we've had plenty of input. We appreciate your input tonight and your email input as well. So with that, we'll close the public speaking, and we'll move on to the first resolution, and then we'll have discussion after the resolution's introduced.
Correct. I just have a motion to amend.
Okay, well, at this point, will the clerk please read the first and only resolution?
Resolution 113, a local law to amend the administrative code of the County of Dutchess in relation to the posting of notices, warnings of the dangers of weapons or firearms.
So moved. Second.
All right, so the resolution has been properly moved and seconded. I'll recognize legislator Valdez for an amendment.
Thank you. I make a motion to amend the text and correct a typographical issue. I did send this to all the legislators multiple times, but it needs to be done here. And replace the phone number of 914-925-5959 to 845-485-9700. That is the Dutchess County Helpline, as we all know, which is available to us 24/7. It is found on page 2 and number 5.
Second.
Okay, the amendment has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment? Legislator Truitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding with this resolution being a local law before us, it was supposed to be laid on our desks in final form. So with an amendment being made, if this amendment were adopted, this would push this resolution to next month. So I will be voting no on this amendment because I do not intend to vote for this resolution either this month or next month. So I would like to oppose this tonight. Thank you.
Legislator Palmer.
Yeah, I just want to ask Legislative Council to weigh in on that. I know you, the
former legislative council, filling in for the current legislative council. Could you just talk to that? If we make this amendment tonight, does this get pushed back to next month?
Well, I think if it's, not everything is black and white. This is, it's whether the amendment is germane to the main motion. So can you term it a typographical, that an incorrect phone number, or is it substantive? In other words, that it was designed to be the Westchester, whatever that phone number went to, or was it designed to go to the Dutchess County helpline? That really wasn't clear. So, I mean, we can start over and go, but if you just want to proceed forward this evening and vote on the amendment and vote on the main motion, I'm sorry to give you kind of a gray answer, but I think it's a gray issue.
So with that in mind, I would still oppose this amendment. My knowledge of a local law, if it's amended, and I believe this is substantive in the sense that it's not just a phone number or an error. It's not like two numbers of Dutchess helpline were turned around or backwards. This is specifically to the Westchester County helpline, and we have extraordinary services here in Dutchess County. I believe it should have been the Dutchess County. I believe it should have been the Dutchess County helpline from the beginning. So I think it is substantive. So I'm going to oppose this amendment tonight. Thank you.
And I don't disagree with that interpretation that, obviously a number that goes to somewhere where people are not supposed to call can be deemed a substantive amendment, as opposed to you inverted 2 digits of the Dutchess County helpline. It's an entirely different agency involved.
All right, Legislative Adkins, you have your hand up first.
I believe the updated amendment was sent out to every legislator. And the reason why it was sent out is for us to work together on this resolution, whether we agree or disagree with the amendment. But there has been no corresponding from the other side as far as working together with this amendment. So I am going to be supporting this amendment and hope that we can proceed forward and talk and debate regarding this amendment and just changing out the phone numbers.
Legislator Dutchess.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that the second phone number there was always and will continue to be in that, which is 988, which is the suicide hotline, in addition to the Dutchess County helpline. I not only emailed this to all of our legislative body, but also had phone calls with chairman, and I did not believe this would have been a hindrance for us to at least discuss tonight.
Legislator Walter?
We were getting some kind of loose, it's not clearly black and white. I have no problem supporting the change in this. I will be speaking on that law afterwards. But, I don't know that, the phone numbers, I think it's sloppy work that it was laid on our desks with the wrong phone numbers. I'm not going to deny that. If it was that critical that we get this right, it should have been laid on our desk correctly and not in haste. As far as working together, I do love the idea of working together, but when a press release goes out an hour after it's being laid on our desk, basically saying this is a done deal, it doesn't give the legislature much chance to work together. However, I do agree that there will be much discussion on this, and I look forward to input from both sides and moving forward.
Legislator Atkins, I'm going to ask the committee to get the comment first.
Oh, wait.
Legislator Carney?
Well, I'm happy if we're going to vote on the amendment to allow that to go forward, but I do have some comments to make. So if now's the appropriate time, that's great. Otherwise, if we're going to vote on the amendment and move forward, that's fine too.
Yeah,
but I
the
would like
discussion
to...
right now is on the amendment, not on the full resolution.
Well, I guess it would be a good time to mention that when I brought this to us a month ago...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. We're debating a resolution for an amendment. She's talking.
Yes.
Not any further elaboration or recitation regarding a local law.
She hasn't even spoken yet, legislator. Let me give her a chance to talk before you're interrupted.
Excuse me. I'm allowed to call a point of order. The legislative attorney is not a member of the Government Service Administration Committee. Thank you.
So let's make sure we stay focused on the amendment right now, which is, is there any further discussion on the amended change of the phone number? On the phone number.
Sure. I just wanted to remind everybody that when we
Mr. Chairman,
introduced the law.
did you rule on my point of order regarding the amendment?
Yes,
Or
you just did.
member speaking during our discussion time?
Point of order. I don't think it's appropriate.
Excuse me, consistent minority leader. I don't think it's appropriate. She don't even get out. She's going to order before she stops.
Stop, everyone, please stop. Stop for 1 minute, okay? I do allow non-committee members to speak. I ask that the committee members get to speak first, and I would allow non-committee members to speak, but in this case, I do want to keep it to the amendment as we go through. So, very short comment.
Yes.
Only on the amendment and
Yes.
regarding the change in the phone number.
Yes. I appreciate the chance to just clarify that when we brought this, I asked everybody to help us out with it and work on it. We could have caught this so quickly. Totally clerical error. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that we've had a lot of time to do that. It seems silly to hold it up now for a vote. So please, I hope we can make the amendment and move forward on a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so again, on the amendment, Legislator Truitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just based on the debate, if we are going to allow this to move forward this month with this amendment, even though I don't believe it's appropriate, if we're okay to move forward, fine. I'll move to amend the number, but then I'm looking forward to discussion after that to continue the debate on this tonight so that we can decide this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All in favor of the amendment? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. The amendment passes. So now before us is the full motion with the amendment. So with that, I will open it up to discussion on the floor. I'll first recognize Legislator Dutchess.
Thank you. I just want to be very, very clear. This is not about taking anybody's guns away. I want to be extremely clear about that. This proposed law is to put up a sign anywhere of firearms sold in Dutchess County. Can we please look at this as parents and as friends and as neighbors? Many of us, myself included, from military families, veterans, let's look at this just as concerned Americans. What can we do to help? If this legislation and warning signage is in gun shops to help if it helps make one gun owner think twice, to be more diligent, preventing one domestic violence incident, one suicide, one unintentional death of a child, then it is worth that effort. I'm a former public school teacher, and I have lost many students to suicide by gun violence. By guns, I'm sorry. As a mom of two, obviously, I also get emotional about this, but both emotions and politics should stay out of this. This is, again, not at all coming for somebody's guns, trying to take away guns at all. I believe this law could save lives here in Dutchess. We use public health signage in many other ways, and it works. Any one life is worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll next recognize Legislator Truitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few questions for the sponsors of the resolution, if they might be able to answer those. The first being, taking a look through the resolution itself, I don't see anywhere as to how this is enforceable. What county agency enforces this, according to the sponsors? Because it does not show that anywhere in here, so if you could please just brief us on that.
Legislator Dutchess.
Thank you, Majority Leader Truitt. You know, this is one of the reasons why we wanted to work together, but enforcement could be left up to the county. It really could be. This is not about enforcement, let's call the sheriff's office, this sign is not posted. This is about us being able to provide signage, and especially the Dutchess County helpline number, to prevent anything that could possibly go wrong. And most gun shop owners, gun shop owners, I have read stories that there are gun shop owners in other areas of the country that work together with bodies of legislative bodies to be able to, offer some type of signage in addition. If complaints were called in, that is something we can discuss, but it could be called into a local police department. But I think that enforcement is really not something that we need to burden our police department with. It's something that we should go over together.
If I might be clear, though, this resolution specifically states that if a sign is not put up by a gun shop, and this is a mandate, this resolution here before us is a mandate that all gun shops are required to put a sign up. If they do not, who enforces that? That's my question. Who collects the $250 fine that you're suggesting here?
So if I may, I think that is a substantive, clearly, issue with this local law, that there's no enforcement mechanism. And if there's going to be one, then you may need a fiscal impact statement, so this is a large problem with it.
So I'd like that answer before I go any further into my part of the debate, because I think it is very significant to this. And then another issue with it is it goes into what a second violation entails, what a third and fourth subsequent violation entails. If we can't even enforce the first violation, and let's pretend we can. Let's pretend a county agency was listed in here as to who enforces this, who hands out the fine, who collects the fine. It doesn't state anywhere in here for a second violation. What is the definition of a second violation? Based on this circular local law here, a second violation would only be if a gun shop put up a sign after it was fined the first time, it put up a sign and then it removed it again. It doesn't have anything in here. If a gun shop does not put the sign up, they pay the $250 fine. How do you get a second violation? It's not in here. It's not. So I don't even know how any other county legislative body could have adopted this in New York State, because it has absolutely no teeth to it whatsoever.
I do have a direct answer about how Westchester County is enforcing it. They did pass it unanimously with the support of the Republican and Conservative vote as well. The complaints do get filed to their Office of Consumer Protection, and that is how the enforcement is led. Again, it's signage. It's basically public health signage. So that is how they are going over it. I believe this would have to be a decision of the counties.
Okay, I'll move past this question, but I do believe this does not clearly state that in here. It absolutely doesn't. So we can say that it will. We'll go along with what Westchester did. So my second question is, what data is there specifically that proves that this will actually do anything, that this will accomplish any less gun violence? I mean, I know you sent a few resolutions or a few links to us, one for food labeling. If you click on the link and you look at it, it says once food products were labeled with their calories, with saturated fats and everything, it says in there that it's a 6.6 reduction in calorie intake and a 10.5% reduction in saturated fat. Those seem like quite minor, but smoking and tobacco, when you look at the warnings and the labels on smoking and tobacco, it's a false correlation, I believe, when you say that the label actually has any impact on that. Rather, it was banning indoor smoking, and it was adding a sin tax on tobacco products. Those were the main drivers in what drove down the use of tobacco products. So I think those are false correlations there. Right, so my question, Mr. Chairman, to the sponsor of the resolution is, what proven specific data can they provide to us tonight to say that this will have an impact?
Does anyone have an immediate response to that question? If not, I'll go on to additional comments. And I will recognize Chairman Culver for a comment.
Thank you. I thought long and hard of this. I did visit most of the gun shops in Dutchess County, because I'm familiar with them as a gun owner and purchaser of guns my adult life. Got mixed reactions from them over this. But the fact of the matter is that every place that has sells firearms has a penal law code 400 requirement that says warning, responsible firearms storage is the law in New York State. Firearms must either be stored with a gun locking device or in a safe storage depository, or not be left outside the immediate possession and control of the owner or the other lawful possessor if a child resides in the home or is present, or if the owner of the possessor resides with a person prohibited from possessing a firearm under the state or federal law. Firearms should be stored, unloaded, and locked in a location separate from ammunition. Leaving firearms accessible to a child or other prohibited persons may subject you to imprisonment, fine, or both. That's there. I never saw it. I've been going to gun shops my whole life, never saw it, but it's there. I did recheck and go in and look. One of the misconceptions that you go into a gun store, and I'll talk about pistols first, and that you go in, you buy your pistol, and you leave. I recently bought a new pistol 3 weeks ago, almost 4. Bought it, left it there as required by law, came back, put my supplement fee and documentation to the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, where they review my pistol permit again, see if anything's changed in my background. They send my supplement to a judge to get signed, who I'm sure does his due diligence or her due diligence and make sure that I'm a legal owner. And lo and behold, today in the mail is my supplement that I now have to go up and pick up my gun. When I do that, I will be filling out a form, and that form will ask a bunch of questions about me, my mental health, my drug usage, my citizenship, and other questions. And it will be run through the FBI's NICS check, and I will wait there for half an hour, and hopefully that goes well. This will be my 6th NICS check of the year so far, and I will be able to bring my pistol home. We always co-mingle our pistols for my wife and I, so that way if something happens to me, she has the possession. She doesn't have to go for that, but she is on that permit. But I want to talk about the one thing that bothers me the most is the idea that people will go home, if this passed, and people go home and think they've actually accomplished something. And that's the farthest from the truth. November 10, 2009 will be a day that will live in my mind for the rest of my life. I'll jump back just a few years. 3 years prior to that, I came home from the town board meeting as town supervisor. Sounded like a dump truck's tailgate slamming at 10 o'clock at night. I said, I couldn't imagine. As a volunteer fireman and an EMT, my plectron opened up, there's a gunshot reported next door through the woods from my house. A guy by the name of Chris Kraft got shot in the shoulder with a 7mm Remington mag rifle in a bad drug deal. He lived. The perpetrator, which I didn't know at the time, came running right through my yard, but as my wife and young daughter were sleeping, I went to my gun cabinet, unlocked it, got out a pistol, made sure that all the downstairs doors were locked and all the outside lights were on. I credit not so much the pistol, but the idea that I threw all the outside lights on, because 2 hours later the state police came to the door with my keys from my pickup truck and handed them to me and said, we tracked him right to your truck and you must have scared him off somehow. But I was comforted to the knowledge that I had a weapon there after he had already shot somebody with a 7mm Remington mag. Let's move on to November 10th, 2009. Chris Kraft, the person that got shot, walks into the Sisseton Mountain Junior Senior High School where I graduated in 1981 and held it hostage for 3 hours. He'd been arrested 24 times prior to that event. Chris Kraft was arrested, convicted, served 7 years. 3 months ago, excuse me, Mr. Kraft was arrested with his son in Hyde Park. And guess what he had? He had a gun in the back seat of his. We pulled over several traffic violations, Route 9 in Hyde Park. His son, Jeremy Kraft, 32, was also arrested. Both men are residents of Rhinebeck. Police determined that Christopher and Jeremy possessed a loaded Mossberg 500A 12-gauge shotgun illegally. Both men had previous criminal convictions that prohibited them from possessing firearms. In addition to the loaded shotgun, an unrestrained child was riding in the front seat of the van.
Point of order, Chairman of the room.
During the arrest, Christopher Kraft refused to comply with law.
Point of order.
This will go to what?
I do have a point of order.
And that is?
This is about a sign that's going to be placed at the gun shops, not about taking guns away or about bail reform or wherever this is headed. Can we bring this to a head about the signage, which is the point of this?
We'll get to that.
law?
Thank you.
It needs discussing the impact, or the alleged impact of this signage.
So during the arrest, Mr. Kraft refused to comply with law orders. 2 men were arraigned in the Hyde Park Justice Court with misdemeanor charges of criminal possession of a weapon, endangering the welfare of a child, and possession of a loaded firearm in a motor vehicle. Chris Kraft was additionally arrested for misdemeanors obstruction of government administration. Both men were released on appearance tickets, returnable in Hyde Park. Do you think this is a sign that's going to stop these kind of people from using guns in their possession? Absolutely not. It's fictitious. I did bring my empty gun case in tonight to talk about other signage that we look at when purchasing a pistol. I have to be a Sig Sauer fan. In it, every pistol that I bought, the ATF Youth Handgun Safety Act notice in the pistol permit. Anybody would like to read it? 10. A gun lock. It's glued to the bottom. The reason I don't have it on my gun is I have a safe and the guns are securely locked in my safe. It comes with a owner's manual, and the first 12 pages, highlighted all in red, are about safety warnings and about the proper use of the gun. I think anybody that thinks that a sign in a gun store will have any effect, even on one life, is fooling themselves and the public, and basically just wants to make this into some political football for themselves. I will not vote for this. If we want to talk about real reforms to stop real things from happening, let's talk about bail reform, where people that have been convicted don't have a second chance of walking out of the courthouse with an appearance ticket. Thank you.
And I'm going to allow committee members to speak first. I think Legislator Atkins, you had your hand up at one point. You still have comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I would like to start off by saying I appreciate legislators in different perspectives. However, what I will say is that this resolution is not extreme, and this resolution does not take away anyone's rights. Before voting tonight, I want everyone to ask yourselves, are you putting politics over people? Ask yourself, why do you feel threatened by any way regarding this resolution? A resolution with a warning sign that reads, access to a weapon or firearm in a home significantly increases the risk of suicide, homicide, death during domestic disputes, and unintentional deaths to children, household members, and others. And if you or a loved one is experiencing distress or depression, call the mobile crisis team or the National Suicide Hotline. May I may I remind everyone of the committees that we all sit on as elected officials, whether it's for Veterans Affairs, the Citizens Advisory Committee of Domestic Violence, or Family and Human Services. But let me point out a few things. For those who sit on the Advisory Committee for Domestic Violence, there's an organization called Evertown Gun Safety. And on their website it reads, every month an average of 70 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. Nearly 1 million women alive today have reported being shot or shot at by an intimate partner. And 4.5 million women have reported being threatened with a gun by an intimate partner. In more than half of mass shootings over the decades, the shooter or former shooter, or the shooter has went after a partner or a family member as part of a rampage. Also, for those who sit on the Veterans Affairs Committee, in 2019, the most recent years of data is available, totaling 47,511 people have died by suicide in the U.S., and more than half a dozen, 23,941 involved in firearms. According to the 2020 Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs states the suicide rate for veterans is 1.5 times the rate of non-veteran adults. Every day, about 17 veterans die by suicide, and 12 of those 17% die from self-inflicted firearm injuries. I'll kind of close with this. Who are we as elected officials, and what do we actually care about? What is our goal as a governing body for Dutchess County? The bottom line is this resolution will help provide education and resources for anyone going into a shop to buy a gun, not to take away anyone's guns. And I think a few people made a public comments and spoke about saving, if it could just save one life. If this can save one life or two lives or thousands of lives, we as elected officials have to do something. If you have any logic or anything to show that Dutchess County is immune to violence, please share that information here. Because violence can show up at any time here in Dutchess. And I think as an elected official, we're tasked with making this county safer.
Are there any other committee members looking to make comments? Legislator Carolyn.
Thank you. I will be voting no on this resolution for the following reasons. Number one, I believe warning labels do not work. In California, there are warning labels on every single thing. Californians have now become desensitized to warning labels. And according to a Harvard Business Review, Californians think everything is bad for you and that warning labels are just to prevent liability. Number two, we've gotten a lot of emails that talk about how successful warning labels have been for the decrease in tobacco use. Smoking has decreased because people can't afford to buy cigarettes anymore with a 75% excise tax. Besides that, when it was banned in public placing, smoking decreased. Warning labels don't work. And I think if we're going to focus on anything, we should focus on violence prevention programs. Thank you.
And Legislator Paul.
I just want to reiterate what one of the gentlemen said, that, we talk about the stats of gun violence, but we never talk about the lives that guns have saved across. And like I said, I was very happy to be able to defend myself and my family. That person could have come into my home and slaughtered all three of us. So there were 3 lives right there that might have been saved because I had a gun in my hand. And there are countless stories of that. They don't get the press that the rest of the stories do. But there are countless stories of people using handguns to save lives. I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm sure there are people here that have those. So are they 300,000, or are there 1 million lives that have been saved because there was a handgun there? Are there women that have thwarted rapes because they were able to shoot their attacker? Are there people that have been abused by their spouses or domestic partners that have saved their lives by being able to defend themselves. I don't know, but you know, it's both sides of the argument. But I will tell you that I don't think a sign is the answer. I think that our Strong Stabilization Center, our mental health hotline, our rapid response teams or crisis response teams, those are the things that help. And I'm glad to support them, and I'll support them all day long. They will save the lives. Thank you.
Legislator Truitt, and then Legislator Bowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to piggyback off of what Chairman Bowler said, that it often is not discussed the importance of guns in self-defense and how they do save lives. I mean, it was a month ago in Charleston, West Virginia, that a concealed carrier woman was carrying her gun at a kid's birthday party with 40 plus attendees, and a 37-year-old convicted felon drove up senselessly with a rifle. I'm getting to my point. This has everything to do with this.
The relevance of, again, something that is public health labeling and education information versus
the argument
the right to own a gun
about how many lives guns take. We're not talking the converse argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to Legislator Munn, the point is the sign essentially is to say the dangers of guns, but I'm speaking to the importance of what they do for our community and what they do for protection. So this has everything to do with it. As I was saying, in West Virginia, there was a female who was carrying a gun and saved probably 40 plus lives because a convicted felon who illegally owned, who did not own, legally had a gun on him, came to a party and was shot dead because this woman was there and was carrying. She saved countless lives, so we need to look at those. So that's where I am on this. I oppose this. I think it's just, in essence, a way to make law-abiding citizens walk up to a door and feel ashamed that they're walking in there. That's what this is. It's right there in your face to make you feel ashamed that you're going in for owning a gun and for buying a firearm and loving your Second Amendment right. If we want to work together, I would be happy to look into, maybe we add more detectives to our criminal investigation unit for violent crime into the sheriff's office. I'd be happy to sit down and discuss that. I think that's something that could actually have a measurable impact on our community. So that's something I'd be happy to discuss, and we're not putting a press release out on that tonight. Thank you.
All right, Legislator Bowler, and then Legislator Munn.
Thank you. So I just kind of wanted to, my grasp with what this resolution is asking for is really a moment of reflection before making a purchase. And in that moment of reflection, that could save a life. However, by all of the standards that we have and procedures in order to purchase any firearms, also the education that happens behind the counter with the gun store owner, I believe does give several points of education and time to think about your purchase. However, tonight's discussion is very important because it's been a night that we've heard people from both sides concerned about the same thing and everybody offering things that can be done that we as a body can support, such as maybe promoting our helplines more to make sure that our helplines are in every single house, in a place that's close to a phone or is visible, to address any of our mental health and to continue to make sure that we're providing as many mental health providers, because it is very difficult to find mental health providers in our county. And maybe we can look at ways of trying to help those that are going into college or in college right now for social work and for psychologists to help residents in our county. But with that, I understand, or my understanding is that this is supposed to slow and bring about a thought process. And I do believe that we have those things in place, so I will be a no vote on this evening's resolution.
Legislator Munn.
Thank you, Chair. As I listened to the speakers tonight, I picked out a number of what I felt were thoughtful remarks, including support for more education, more training, things along those lines. That's how I look at this. I look at this as education. I look at this as a simple label that provides additional information. And to be frank, I mean, if it actually does discourage somebody from buying them, just those words, then perhaps they shouldn't have done that individual, if that's what their decision is. But to think that someone just walking into the shop, for the first time has already made their decision, you're basically saying that all the other labeling that we talked about tonight is pointless as well. That all the other signs are pointless as well. So I can't buy into that. Do I think this is going to solve every problem? Of course not. Nobody claimed it would. There are a number of people who came up here tonight and said that we were claiming that, but we're not. So I will be supporting this tonight. I think it's, again, if it saves one life, or if it could save one life, it's worth doing. It's a simple piece of paper to be posted. If that information is already being provided in that location that way, then someone can make that argument, but I haven't heard anyone make that argument tonight. So, in addition, I'd like to be able to have a sponsor to this law, and I will be supporting it tonight. Thank you.
Okay, well, that you the sponsorship. Thank you. Legislator Ivan, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I would like to speak to, I know Legislator Truitt made a comment about someone going into a gun shop and feeling ashamed. If you're going into a gun shop and feeling ashamed, it must be for a reason. And I would love to have the sign to deter anyone who's going in to do the wrong thing with that gun. Because someone going in doing the right thing could look at the sign and know that it's there and just walk in and purchase whatever equipment that they need. And I know there was something mentioned of having psychologists and social workers look at this from different angles. Well, I am a social worker. I'm a New York State licensed social worker. And when it comes to education and awareness and things of that nature and providing resources, you do it at every level, every corner. It is for someone to get the information that they need. So if it's putting a sign, using the helpline, using street outreach, those are components that helps a person that may be in need. So again, this is not taking away anyone's amendment rights or making anyone feel ashamed to go into a shop, because if you're going into a shop to buy a gun, like all these people that got up and spoke to us for today, you're going in to do the right thing. Legislator Poultry brought up some really good points about people that do the right thing with guns. And right, that wasn't talked about, but we did bring it up today, and I absolutely agree. But also, this resolution is for those who may be struggling, who may need that extra level of support, whether it's looking at the sign as soon as you walk in or seeing it in the store. It definitely helps, and it goes a long way.
Any other committees, members wishing to speak? Seeing no committee members' hands, I will recognize Legislator Kearney for a comment.
Thank you for recognizing me, Chair. I have many things I wanted to say tonight. I think the most important thing perhaps for me to address, though, particularly being one of the folks who brought this forward, is how disingenuous I found Majority Leader Truitt's objections. And objections and then questions for more information. A couple of people mentioned the press release we put out, which was simply, I think, to announce that we were encouraging a look at this. And I believe my own quote was to say that I looked forward to working with everyone to try to amend it. And I believe I said that quite strongly on the floor last month, too. But I'm disappointed to have to report that although our caucus reached out numerous times, we didn't receive responses, significant responses to the legislation for weeks, and then only to be asked for hard data. And I'm definitely a fan of hard data, but in this case, I suspect everyone here knows hard data is pretty hard to come by on this kind of signage, because this is a new approach to dealing with gun dangers in our society, particularly dangers not of the type that we've been talking about with criminals, but about people getting harmed in their homes or harming themselves. This is a new approach. So we know that that data isn't available to us right now, but that doesn't doesn't mean that we shouldn't be at the forefront of using what many experts are telling us may be the best course of action in protecting young people. I'm also really disappointed to report that we received not a single word or act of support from the leader of our county executive Marcus Molinaro, nor from our acting sheriff Bergen Barati, who I called on to help us with this. Again, I really wanted to see this pass, folks. And to have two of the arguably most important responsible men in this county, responsible and entrusted with the safety of our residents and children remain silent, has sort of left me heartbroken. Which maybe I'll cut short a lot of the rest of the comments I was going to give tonight and simply share something with you that my daughter prepared for me. My daughter is 16 and a half years old. She's quite a thoughtful young woman. I know you all knowing me can imagine she's a bit of a firebrand. And she wrote a lot about her first exposures to gun violence in schools, and I hope no one's going to point a order me on here because we've talked about a lot of different gun issues. But what she said, she wanted to come and read this herself, and I have to tell you that I find the gun issues so frightening that I asked her not to come. And I thought really long and hard about that, because that's a really big decision and a really big signal to send to my child that I wasn't sure it was safe for her to come here and be part of it, what I thought would be a strong debate about guns in general. And I'm really happy, actually, that it's had the positive tenor and feeling of safety. But I asked my daughter not to come. So she wrote in part, she said, I'm not coming here to ask you to protect me from mass shootings because gun legislation that to keep my peers and myself safe aren't on the table at all. When we ask for that, we're told that it's unrealistic, that our fear is uncalled for, essentially told that your guns are more important than putting your children's minds at ease and creating a safer world for them. And I understand that's going beyond the purview, so this gets to it now. Instead, I am asking you to do the barest minimum and inform people of the risks of having guns in our homes. The risks which outweigh the benefits, considering that only a very small fraction of gun-related injuries are caused in self-defense. One particular statistic that I hold close to my heart is that the increased suicide rate that having a gun in the home brings. This is because just this year, a young man who graduated the same year as my boyfriend and whose little sister is in my grade, in fact, that young woman was at my house the other day, drove away from his home and his family, and he never went back. He shot himself in his car instead. A Harvard study found that states with laxer gun laws experience higher rates of suicide by self-inflicted gun wounds than those with stricter gun laws. These states with lax laws have an increased likelihood of death by suicide by 3.7 times that of stricter states for men and 7.1 times that of stricter states for women. Having a gun in the home increases the risk of death by suicide by threefold. The U.S. Center of Disease Control and Prevention tracked 24,432 suicides caused by a self-inflicted gunshot in 2018. And let me remind you that suicide rates grow every single year. I'm almost done. Suicide is often impulsive. In moments of great, terrible pain, a person struggling with their mental health cannot comprehend that that pain will ever end. That is why so many suicides are preventable. 90% of people who attempt suicide fail because they choose methods that give you time to cool off from the impulse, such as drug overdose. Even methods like stabbing and cutting have success rates of only 1 to 3% because bleeding out takes time. Self-inflicted gunshot wounds give you no time to cool off. You make the choice, you pull the trigger, and it's over. Suicide by firearm is the most successful way to commit suicide, and it succeeds in cases. No one is coming to take your guns. All we ask is for people to be properly informed about the danger they are putting themselves and their families in by bringing a firearm into the home. And I'm just going to leave you with 2 quotes from victims of suicide by gun. This is from Emily Frazier, the widow of Brian Frazier, who in 2008 shot himself with a semi-automatic. There's a gas station maybe a 5-minute drive away from us, and the gas station sells guns. I didn't realize that places like that existed. Brian just walked in and bought a handgun. We had gotten into an argument, which we hardly ever did, and he left. The next morning, the police knocked on my door. A construction crew had found him dead in his car at an abandoned railway station. And then this is the last one. And again, I want to thank you for indulging me in reading these, because this is the kind of violence that we were hoping the legislature might get behind in having some additional warnings posted in gun stores. This is from Janice Demers, mother of Zachary, a 23-year-old who killed himself in 2008. To have even considered suicide, he must have been so low, just beyond anything. I went back and looked through all his school papers. What stood out in his teacher's comments was his impulsiveness. Being impulsive, you sometimes make rash decisions, spur of the moment, and they don't always turn out for the best. There were guns in our home. My husband has hunting rifles.
Thank you. Legislator Keith, and then...
Thank you, Chairman. Your members of this committee. A statement was just made that unless this gentleman is a police officer, there's no way he can walk in and buy a handgun and walk out the door with it. It's just not possible. It's not at all possible. So that is a factually untrue statement. Unless that person is a police officer, that's the only way that can be done. Now, it continues to be brought up over and over and over again about mental health. That seems to be the underlying factor on all of these things. Suicide prevention, the vets having the problems. Those are the conversations that we should be having. I understand, I get the sign thing, I don't agree with it, and if it came out of committee, I would not be voting for it. We need to have a conversation about further impacts of the helpline and offering our vets more services. Thank you.
Legislator Gallo.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be quick. Legislator Curry, you made a point that your daughter did not feel safe tonight, correct? To come here?
Actually, I felt that she might not be safe to come here. I asked for additional security tonight too, just in case.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. And I would like to thank the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office for providing that for us tonight.
Yes, I went outside and thanked them as well.
Thank you. And my second point about communication. So I actually tallied this up this year. I sent the minority leader 9 emails this year, and I've got a response to 2 of them, and then one of them was a phone call. So when we're talking about communication, and we keep talking about working together, if I'm not getting a response from anybody, how do you think that we're going to work together on this bill? Does that make sense? Thank you. I emailed you about the same topic 4 times and never heard back.
Can I directly answer, Chair?
Sure.
I hold you back. It was multiple phone calls that we had.
I'm talking about.
Okay, question and response. Let's take that one offline, because that's not germane to the topic. I did see Legislator Diaquani saying about, and then Legislator Atkins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few comments. It was interesting that the comment has been made, the comment was made, suicide succeeds in 90% of the time. It doesn't mean that 90% of the suicides are as a result of gun violence, that it succeeds 90% of the time. It doesn't mean that 90% of suicides are the result of gun violence. It was Mr. Hahn that moved that the gun suicide rate down quite a bit on that scale. But it's really not too fashionable or too dramatic to talk about somebody taking their life by gently going to sleep in their garage. The other thing I take exception to is, and it was used many times this evening, the reference to the acts of violence with a gun by an intimate partner. The two words makes you want to conjure up, Leave It to Beaver or Donna Reed. I would like to say that there's probably not those idyllic situations with intimate partners. Intimate partners can be very, very bad people. And but we always use special words just to evoke special emotions. So a sign is not going to do anything, in my opinion. A gun is not an impulse purchase, but acts like suicide and acts of violence like that are.
Legislator Atkins.
Yes. I just have one quick question. I don't know if anyone can answer it. So we're saying as a legislative body that a signage does not work, or this won't help. What's the purpose of having the Helpline Act? And the only reason why I asked, or I pose that question, because signage does work. Education does work. And this signage goes along with education. And again, I'm kind of stuck because it's almost like we're on two different planets right now. This is, again, going back to a really simple resolution, not taking away anyone's amendments or their rights. It's a resolution to continue the great work that Dutchess County is doing when it comes to services and resources. I don't know, maybe that person can call that helpline, someone can go out and then be transported to the stabilization center. How many people actually know about the stabilization center? We come here all the time and we talk about the Helpline Act and getting people connected with resources and how great it is. So why are we giving so much pushback to a warning sign? I'm really stuck on that.
All right, I think at this point, most every legislator on and off the committee has had the opportunity to speak. So last call, any final comments? Legislator Sagliano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the comments and the sermon tonight. And just, getting back to the essence of the written local law, there's a section that says, upon issuance of a license, the county clerk would be required to provide the licensee a written copy of the notice indicating the warning risks of the presence of a weapon or firearm in the home. Well, the county clerk is not responsible for issuing pistol permits, so I don't know what particular license that speaks to. So I believe that this law is ministerial flawed, and I really don't understand why we take the position, well, Westchester County did it. Well, because Westchester County decided to jump off the Tappan Zee Bridge. Would we jump off the bridge? I don't think so.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of this committee, so I appreciate your recognizing me. I would just like to take a moment and break down back to basics with, the proposed law. If we were to take the argument over gun control out of this and just look at this as it is, what has been proposed is a warning sign about purchasing something in a store. And it's telling you that guns are dangerous, essentially. It says guns are dangerous. So for those individuals who are purchasing guns, they're purchasing a gun for one of several reasons. Either they use it to hunt, or they're purchasing one for self-defense. That's the vast majority of gun purchases right there. And the reason that those items are effective in both of those manners is because the weapon is dangerous. You go into a gun store to purchase a gun knowing that you're purchasing a dangerous item for one of those reasons. My son has a Razor scooter, okay? And it was a joke because when we opened the box, right there on the Razor scooter, it says, "This product moves when used." So they have a warning on Razor scooters, "This product moves when used." And I can't imagine that anyone in their right mind would purchase a scooter, open it, see something telling you that if you use it, it moves, and then say, "Never mind, don't want it, send it back to the North Pole. Thank you." We have to think also, our state government, our federal government impose so much on a small business owner. And small business owners have suffered greatly enough over the past few years, but people don't realize that the various agencies that business owners are basically mandated and to display disclosures. Some of them are great and make sense, but at a certain point, it becomes redundant, where you're losing the effectiveness of the original intent. So how many more layers of government are we going to add onto small business owners who already have the verbiage in one form or the other displayed? I can think of certain businesses that are mandated to display signage disclosures from government agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Health, OSHA, the New York State Department of Health, Department of Labor, all on one business, all of which are copied and pasted from one agency to the other, yet you're still responsible for displaying both. If anything, I think it would be much more resourceful of this body, as county legislators, to actually bring together owners of stores where guns are sold and the helpline. I am sure that local business owners would take great interest in working hand in hand with the helpline. That may be the better approach to this, instead of having the county government force them to post signs that they really don't need. Thank you.
All right, Legislator Culver and Legislator Atkins, hopefully we're about ready to wrap this up.
I would just ask the council to, she received a memorandum from County Attorney Carolyn Blackburn. I just wanted to opine a little bit on that.
Yes, I just think that the legislature should be aware of some of the legal issues with respect to this local law, aside from the back and forth of the merits of it. On a legal basis, Caroline Blackburn did issue a memo, which I have reviewed this evening. And her first comment is that this local law is designed to amend the administrative code, and the purpose of the administrative code is to set forth the details of the administration of county government. This law does not do that, so it's really improperly placed in the administrative code. One of the other issues she raised was already raised by Legislator Sagliano, which was that it presupposes that the county clerk issues the license, and the county clerk does not do that. There are some other issues which would have to be looked at in more depth, but this may be preempted by Penal Law Section 400, which seeks to regulate firearms, and also whether this is an improper restriction on the commercial free speech of the dealers. So there are many, many issues in addition to the lack of an enforcement mechanism that we discussed earlier. So I just think the legislature should be aware of all of these major issues with this local law.
All right, thank you. Legislator Atkins.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know if anyone remembers, and thank you for giving that report out, but last month, Legislator Carney did request to work with the county attorney, Caroline Blackburn, to draft language that is appropriate for this resolution. So just to point that out. And I think what I'm going to finish with is that we agree that we all care about our community and safety. So one of the legislators just made a comment basically saying, breaking it down and talking about a scooter and things of that nature. But moving forward, I don't know if we can do it tonight, put some amendments on the floor, or come back next month with the resolution. You did also mention, one of the legislators mentioned that local gun shops have signage that already says the implications of what can happen when using a firearm. So maybe we can amend this resolution or come back next month where they can add on the helpline's information or the National Suicide Hotline and just add it to the information that they have posted in the store.
All right, any other comments? All right, I think there's been a lot of discussion for and against. I think we have to acknowledge we are all interested in the well-being of the citizens of our county and our districts, and we want the best, and we want to take appropriate measures. I'll just editorialize for a second. It sounds like there's different approaches and whether this is the right method or not. So we've had a lot of debate. I thank everyone for that debate and their patience. And with that, the debate is closed, and I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Colburn.
No.
Truitt.
No.
Houston, absent. Valdez Smith.
Yes.
Atkins.
Yes.
Sagliano.
No.
Bowler.
No.
Paloni.
No.
Page.
Yeah.
Munn.
Yes.
Caswell.
No.
Garrido.
No.
7 no, 4 yes, 1 absent. Resolution defeated.
All right, thank you.